are going to, ah, yeah, thanks. We're going to be listening to, first of all, Michelle Smith. Ah, technology is, yeah, not that. Michelle Smith from Easy Frascati in Italy is an invited guest. So we're going to be hearing from her for 20 minutes, and then we have representatives from each of the four regions in CREATOUR to talk about what they are doing. So without further ado, because we're the last session before lunch, I want to introduce you to Michelle Smith, who was born in Australia of English parents. She later returned to London with her parents. But by the time she was 18, she was working for the Compagnia Italiana Turismo. And following that, she had many, many other positions with various travel companies in Rome. She then turned to hotel management and worked in that for 15 years. During that time, though, she learned as much as she could about local history and continued her own artist's work, painting in watercolor and oils, and following her passion for wine and wine tourism. By this time, she was living outside Rome in Castelli Romani, famous for Frascati wines. Now, she set up a tourism website in 2014. She's going to talk to us about that, filling a gap that she could see that wasn't being filled by the local administration. She worked to convince many local wineries of the importance of creative tourism and having tourists visit them. And now she's organizing various events, including conferences, wine events, and an international painting event. She's a winery guide, painter, web designer, translator, and an eno-tourism consultant. She maintains the website www.easyfrascati.com. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Michelle Smith.
discover such a nice town like Braga. So, my experience in creative tourism. Well, wine tourism might not sound that creative, but it was a pretext to introduce the local town of Frascati into tourism, because they, being so near Rome, they don't consider themselves as a tourist attraction, even though part of the history during the 1960s was. So just a bit first about me. As you can see, I'm not a wise owl, I'm not an academic. This is a little bit more like me. Well read, wine. But I'm always curious, I'm always asking myself questions, and because my past is in tourism, it seemed natural that I should combine everything that I do into that. And in 2014, I decided that the area I live in really needed some coordination, because we just couldn't leave things to the local authorities. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. So where did I start? Well, as you heard in the introduction, I had my first job in tourism with the CIT. I really got thrown in at the deep end. I was the local resort representative, and I had a really intense summer, which led me on to staying in tourism practically for the rest of my life. As I said, as you were told, then I moved into the hotel business. But just to give you an idea where I am, I'm in Frascati. This is just a panoramic view of the town. We're about 20 kilometers from Rome. Oops, that's the wine map, but you can just about see it. It's near Rome there, Frascati, famous for the wine. Here you can see it a little bit better. There's a red dot. So you can see this vicinity to the big city. Well, it was really difficult to get people in the town used to the idea that the vicinity with Rome could be an advantage rather than a hindrance. Every time I speak to hoteliers, they still say, keep quiet about the train station because otherwise people won't sleep here, they'll sleep in Rome instead of coming to Frascati. This is because mainly in Frascati there's a large scientific community. We have the European Space Agency and the National Physics, Nuclear Physics laboratories. So there, up until now, hotels were really depending mainly on businessmen and scientists coming to stay, even though Frascati has always been famous for the wine. Lost a bit of its reputation during the 80s and the 90s, unfortunately, but I think we're getting things back on track. I'm really modest and I'm a very practical person, so I don't usually take merit for things, but I think a little bit of what I've done has created a lot more tourism in our area. So, oops, getting used. So, what did I start this website for? Well, it's because I noticed there wasn't a one-stop shop. There wasn't one place where tourists could find correct information. The local administration wasn't really bothered about incentivating tourists, which unfortunately is quite typical of Italian politics. There seems to be something a little bit wrong with the way they manage things, and tourism is one of those. Our local council doesn't even have a councillor that is in charge of tourism. So I just felt there was a gap. We needed to put everything just in one place. So I set up a sort of a local DMO and had, the pretext was to have the wineries on there, but I didn't just include the wineries. Let's say that was to attract people to visit the website, let them know that they didn't have to go all the way to Tuscany from Rome, that Frascati was literally 28 minutes on the train, and that they could come up. And so I included on the website the local courses, cookery courses, and painting, photography workshop, all sorts of different activities that were available in the area and that people didn't even know that were available. Above all, the tourist information point, which leads me why Patrick was speaking. He really spurred loads of different notes, loads of different things I could say. And in fact, one thing I noticed was the people even working in the hotels didn't know what was on offer. So it felt right to make sure they had a reference where they could just at the click find the right information. And I've just got a little video here because I wanted to show you a little bit where I am and what the potential is. So yeah, I need just to get the link on my website. Mama, okay. It's only a couple of minutes. It's on the home page. This is one thing I invested in. It didn't cost a lot of money. Just because you're a newbie or you don't have to spend a lot of money on doing things. So I had this little video made. So how do you do that? Can you do that? As we said, technology is a wonderful thing. There you go. Yeah, okay, so. This is a local villa called Villa Falconieri because Frascati is famous for, there's no music, but anyway, just to show you, there's a nice music that was actually composed in this villa. Up until now, Frascati had always been marketed as a town with these magnificent villas. but they weren't open to the public. So the whole thing, all of the tourism that was being promoted, even in international tourism fairs, was based around these villas, and only this one is open to the public. It's a bit like promoting Braga with the lovely church up on the hill and walking up all those steps and not being able to get in. This is pretty much the same as what was going on. You can see we've got quite an important history in this area. Ancient Frascati, known as Tusculum, was actually founded 100 years before Rome itself, and there's lots of vineyards, as you can see. So basically this is just the panoramic of our area, which you can see has an awful lot of potential. The villa that was at the beginning of the video is actually now a Latin academy, which is another thing that's going to bring a lot of tourism to our area. Unfortunately, in our area, it's always private enterprise that makes things happen. So anyway, can stop that now. Oh, the music's actually on now. Miracles.
Do you want me to stop the video or?
Yeah, stop and go ahead with it. Okay, so back to our PowerPoint. Perfect, that's great. Yeah, fine. So what problems did I encounter when I created my website? Well, first was believing in possibilities that not even the residents and the business owners themselves believed in. Finding the precise information to publish on our website. It had always been sort of, yeah, if you contact me, we can do anything, but contact me and I'll give you a price. Well, that's not how tourism is working today. Now people want to see, they click on something and they buy it immediately. That's how they want to buy things. If you think a lot of English people, for example, book holidays Saturday night when they get back from the pub. So you really need to be on the ball and get in there quick. Also needed to gain people's trust. My website is free. I don't charge the local businesses or activity providers to be on there. So there was where's the catch? If it's free, how are you making your money? Well, I don't make money on my website. That wasn't the idea. It's my way of doing something for my community. And indirectly, I get work. I am a guide at 2 local wineries, sometimes even more than that because I'm freelance. So by creating more influx into the town, I actually get more work, which seems quite logical. The next problem was actually building my own website. You can see I'm not really that techie, but nowadays you don't need to know any code. Once I had an aim, I wanted to do something, I found a way of doing it, and it was really easy. It cost me 20 euros a month to maintain my website, and at the time I had discovered Weebly, which is exactly what was used to build the conference website. You can even get free domains through those. So I just paid enough so I could connect to my own domain. And nowadays I would probably use something different, but it served its purpose. And so just shows you don't have to pay a lot of people, you don't need a lot of funding just to set up a website. Next thing, remember please, if you're in a business, you're not at school, you can copy. So I wanted a good idea of how to design my website, what sort of things I needed to put on there. So I looked at another wine region, which is the Napa Valley in California, because I thought, okay, Frascati has such an amazing history. In California, what do they have? Just the vineyards. So how come they're so popular? What are they doing right? So I actually went and saw what Napa Valley was doing to promote themselves. And actually that even gave me more ideas of what sort of activities should be provided. So I copied a website that I'd seen, and I had an idea of who I was aiming my website at, what target, the age the people needed to be. I hadn't done a SWOT at the time, but I I had an idea. I wanted to get people of my age to come up to Frascati. They seemed the right target, the empty nesters with a little bit more time on their hand, a little bit more money, individuals who don't want big groups, which is another problem that you can encounter. As I took note when Patrick was speaking, it's good to promote tourism, but really you don't want mass tourism. So you're going to have small groups and FIT clients. So that's really a small amount of people. So it's going to be hard to balance the getting a small amount of people, but also being able to make some money, because at the end of the day, it is all about sustaining a community and getting them to earn from what they're doing, so that they are creating something for themselves. So how are you going to offer a tour, for example, or an activity that's going to have the right price? I found recently that I get a lot of individuals, and actually a lot of them are even single people, because having some sort of creative tourism is a great way for people that are traveling on their own, especially women, to bond and meet with other people and actually not be just confined to their hotel room, wandering around and just walking on their own or doing things on their own. Having an activity is getting really, really popular, because there are an awful lot of people traveling actually on their own. But if you're accepting bookings, then that's going to be a little bit difficult, because you're going to want to actually carry out your activity, even if you just have one or two people attending. So it can be a bit difficult to realize what sort of prices those people should be paying to make it economically viable for you to actually run your tour. So just a little bit of advice on: see your town every day, trying to look from a tourist point of view. This is something I found in my area they weren't doing. What would they find particular? What would have the wow factor? This makes me think of, Patrick actually made me think about this when he was talking. You need to remember what the genius loci is of your area. One thing I realized, I was coming in from Porto Airport to Braga on the bus, and as I went past the IKEA and the Leroy Merlin signs, I thought how globalization has made everything so same, even listening to American music on the bus radio. And then there was this lovely break between the US playlists when I heard a Portuguese song, and even though the windows of the bus were shut, I could smell the eucalyptus smell. The perfume of those eucalyptus trees actually coming through to the bus, even though the windows were shut. And that's something I'm going to remember forever. And it was just such a small and simple thing. And I wonder how many people in this area still think about the smell of the eucalyptus. Probably don't even notice anymore. Just like when I go past the Colosseum, I hardly see it's there. So just try and always put yourself in the tourist's shoes. So what do you have that they would see as special or different? Have you got a community of artisans, lots of farms, great food? What is it that makes your area particular? Identify that and work from there. So you don't have to construct new things, but you use what you already have. You'll find that a lot of activities actually spurt out from businesses that are already around. Just like the wineries opening to tourists, they're already making wine. And it wasn't until very recently, partly since I've set up my website, that the wineries have realized the importance of opening to the public. They're spreading word not just about their wine, but all the hard work that goes into making their product. And it's all really advertising that is paying for itself. You can spend less on marketing, and you're getting clients that stick to your brand because they've actually been to your winery. I hadn't actually done a SWOT analysis or a pest and all the other things before I set out, but I had already identified what was there. It was quite obvious, but it's a good idea to do one. You look at your strengths, the opportunities, the weaknesses, what are the threats, one of the threats could be that you create too much of a mass tourism. You've got to find the balance between what the tourist is looking for. They're looking for the traditions, yet the people in a place might be more interested in actually progress, in developing something. So you've got to maintain a good balance. There's a particular little village in Umbria near Orvieto called Civita di Bagnoregio. They went from 15,000 tourists in 1 year to 300,000 the next year. And I avoid going back. It's still beautiful, but it's just been too much. So you've got to find the balance. What if you don't have anything? Well, you can invent something. I came across this place in Wales in an article in a newspaper. I thought it was a brilliant idea. They've actually invented an attraction, this rural town. All it was, let's say, famous for was a railway station. So they had a project where they invented a series of 10 spy holes. So people look through these things and they can see different parts of the history of the town. And said in the article, walkers can follow red way markers on the pavements, and there are new oak benches and newly planted trees along the route. The trail for which an audio guide has been developed leads up to Market Street. And so the whole tourism influx is based around these 10 holes that you look through, and a video tour. By the way, I invested some of the money I saved on not having to pay for nice photographs in a walking tour of the town, because there's no official guides, so nobody actually manages to see what the history of Frascati is like. And this is just a photo of the spy hole. Okay, I've got 1 minute. So what you do, you look through it, and they've invented something. So you've got an idea. Now what do? Well, as I said, work with what you have, then create a team and work together. This is something that where I am in Frascati is a bit difficult, because people think that there's not enough to go around, so they hang on to what they've got quite jealously. Well, it doesn't work that way, because if you create a team and you are collaborating even with other activities that are doing the same thing for you, it will give your place an identity, and it's very important. So I have this little quote I like to use: if the tide comes in, all of the boats go out. And so you're trying to get that tide to come in. So emerging trends, well, good news, you're onto a good thing. Even TripAdvisor talking about experiential tourism, and you can read up there what it said. So historical heritage, okay, and food tours, and this is actually the numbers. Okay, time's up. So one thing, legislation will have to eventually take into consideration the sharing economy, which is something in Italy that's not happening, because Patrick said about mushroom picking. Well, you could have an idea of taking tourist mushroom picking in Italy, but it's illegal. Unless you've got a license, you can't do things like that. And you find that, especially in Italy, a lot of the things that you come into your head that you like to do, there's always a law against it. So, especially about earning an income, to become part of those European projects in Italy, you have to have a VAT number. And as soon as you open a VAT number, you're obliged to pay a lot in national health insurance, even before you've taken your first penny. So just, I said about Weebly, today I would probably use Wix. And then the last piece of information, take a look at what is working well on Airbnb experiences. This is something new, and it goes to show how things are shifting. They were concentrating on just places to stay. Now their big business is the experiences. Okay, they take 20% commission, but this, especially in Frascati where I live, has given a lot of businesses to the possibility of become well known, and it's given them the idea that Frascati is a tourist destination. And another thing that local authorities and councils should remember: tourists love to visit where residents love to live. Thank you.